Hello and welcome. This is Christy Haig with a tutorial for you from digitalscrapbookingclasses.com. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the second tool in the Photoshop Elements toolbar, which is the magnifying tool. That's this one right here that looks like a magnifying glass. Again, we're going to focus on the tool options that appear right across the top. The first are simply a plus and a minus sign. The plus tool will zoom in on your image. The minus tool will zoom out on your image. Very useful if you need to look up close at something on your layout, and then if you want to look at the whole again. Now the other cool thing about the zoom in plus tool is that wherever I click on my layout is going to be what it zooms in on. So if I want to zoom in on this flower, I click here and it continues to zoom closer there. If I changed my mind and wanted to zoom in over here, I could click over here and it would zoom there. So wherever I click with the plus tool on the layout is the part of the layout that it will zoom in on. Now you'll notice each time I click this that the percentage number right here is going to change. So as I zoom out, it goes from 17 to 13 to 8 to 6. Again, as I zoom in, it can go to 8 to 13 to 17. If I wanted to pick a number in between, so if I wanted to go to 15%, I could simply click and highlight that, type 15 and hit enter, and it would zoom to 15%. There is also, by clicking on this little arrow, a slider that allows me to slide the number bigger or smaller. I find actually that these plus and minus symbols actually jump right to percentages that turn out to be very clear graphically. So I like those. The one problem I have when I do jump is that, for example, right now at 13%, my layout is slightly too big for this workspace, and so I find myself having to scroll up and down, which is not ideal. And yet if I zoom out to something that will fit in my workspace, it's so tiny I have trouble seeing what I want to do. And so the workaround for that is to zoom in to a good level, and then to come all the way down to the bottom of the window where your layout is, and you'll see that the mouse changes from just the one pointer to a double arrow. And if I click and hold my mouse down and pull this slightly bigger, I can stretch that window out so that I don't have to scroll, so that I can see the top and the bottom all at once. So that's the basics of the magnifying tool. Now we're going to look at these options over here. The first is Resize Windows to fit. Right now it's checked, but if I were to uncheck that and zoom in, you would see that the window stays exactly the same size, but the layout gets zoomed in on. And the same thing would happen if I were to zoom out. The picture would continue to get smaller and smaller, but my window here would stay exactly the same size. So if I check that again and click instead on it with this box checked, you'll see that as I get smaller or bigger, my window is now changing to be the size to fit as much of it as it can. The second option is to zoom all windows. If I check that and open multiple images, I can click on one of them to zoom in, and it will also zoom in on the other. And the same thing when I zoom out. I can click on either one and it will zoom out both pictures together. So that's useful if you have two images that you want to compare and you want to zoom in together. But for the most part, when I'm scrapbooking, I leave that unchecked. This first button over here of these 4 buttons is 1-to-1. And if I click on that, it will zoom in on the image so that it is completely zoomed to 100%. You'll see over here. This is very useful if you really want to get up close, maybe to look at a shadow, or if you want to do some erasing and you want to make sure you're not missing any pixels. The zooming 1-to-1 is very useful. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out here, and I'll show you the next button. This button is called Fit Screen. As I click on it, it will change, and that wasn't a very easy one to see. If I click on it, it will change it so that the window here fits exactly into my workspace as best it can. So if I'm zoomed in real close on something and I don't want to click the zoom out all as many times as I would need to, I can simply click one button and it would fit it to the screen. Fill screen is the same thing. It will simply fill that window as big as it can to fit the screen. Print size, I haven't found this one very useful. It's the best I can figure out is that it's Photoshop Elements guess at what size it's going to be printed, but I don't find that very useful. So I often will use the fill screen or the fit screen if I want to see different aspects of my layout. Now one more little thing I want to show you, and that is a fun trick with the zoom in with the plus arrow selected. If I wanted to say zoom in just on this picture right here, I could click, instead of just clicking my mouse once, I'm clicking and holding it, and I can drag a box around that picture and it will zoom in on exactly what I selected. So again, if I wanted to zoom in this time up here on some of this rope, I could click the plus tool and zoom over here and it would zoom in. And if I wanted to get even closer, I could do it again and zoom in just on that section. So there you have it. A bunch of options with the magnifying tool, very useful for looking at your layout from different perspectives. Before I leave you, I do want to give credit for the graphics that I used on this layout. This layout was created with graphics by Cindy Snyder, Eva Kipler, JD Day Studio, Delia Company, Susie Q Scraps, and Darcy Baldwin. For more tutorials and classes in digital scrapbooking, head over to digitalscrapbookingclasses.com. Have fun and keep scrapping memories.